is a boundary, a threshold, and the older the bridge, the more stories it absorbs. Tragedies, whispers, and secrets that refuse to fade. Across the world, there are places known as suicide bridges, where countless people are mysteriously drawn to their deaths. There are bridges where cars vanish without explanation, never reaching the other side. And there are bridges where witnesses swear they've seen faceless crowds waiting in the fog. Tonight, I will share with you three terrifying true stories about an abandoned bridge, stories that were told by real people, each leaving behind more questions than answers. I warn you, these are not urban legends written for cheap scares. These are chilling accounts that locals swear are true. If you watch this video until the very end, one thing is certain: you will never look at a bridge the same way again, especially if you find yourself alone, in the middle of the night, surrounded by silence and mist. Story 1. The Loop on Blackwood Bridge. It was a cold October night when Daniel drove down the old county road. He was tired, returning from a late shift, and the fog that crept in from the river made the journey almost unbearable. His GPS showed the usual route home, across Blackwood Bridge, a structure locals had whispered about for years. Blackwood Bridge had been closed to traffic for more than a decade. Cracks in the steel, unstable foundations. The county declared it unsafe. Yet for some reason, the GPS always seemed to direct people that way. Daniel didn't question it. He just wanted to get home quickly. As he approached the barricades, he noticed something strange. The warning signs and concrete blocks were gone. The road ahead was open, though the bridge loomed in the mist like the skeleton of some ancient beast. He hesitated for a second, then pressed the gas. The sound of his tires echoed unnaturally loud against the rusted metal. The fog thickened as he entered the middle of the bridge, and Daniel felt his chest tighten. He glanced in his rearview mirror and froze. There was no road behind him, only more bridge. He told himself it was the fog playing tricks. Bridges could be long, disorienting. But when he checked his GPS again, the screen had gone black. A faint glow, like static, shimmered where the map should be. He drove faster. The end of the bridge had to be close. But when the headlights finally pierced through the fog, he saw the same barricades he'd driven past minutes earlier. Only this time, they were intact. Concrete blocks sealed the road. Rusted signs screamed, "Do not cross." Heart pounding, Daniel slammed on the brakes. His car skidded to a stop just inches before impact. Confused and terrified, he looked back in his mirror and saw the faint glow of taillights behind him. Another car, except it wasn't moving. And it wasn't a car from this decade. Through the fog, Daniel could make out the shape of an old sedan, maybe from the 1970s. Its headlights flickered like dying candles. Inside sat a driver, head slumped forward against the wheel. Daniel tried to wave, to signal, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, the car slowly rolled forward without a sound. Its tires left no tracks, no noise, as if it wasn't really touching the bridge at all. Panic surged through him. He slammed the accelerator, desperate to outrun whatever this was. But no matter how fast he drove, the bridge stretched endlessly before him. The fog swirled like a living thing, and in its shifting gray shapes, he thought he saw faces, blank, pale faces watching from the railings. Then his radio came to life. Static at first, then a voice, "Stay with us." Daniel yanked the power knob, but the radio wouldn't shut off. The voice repeated, more distorted, layered with whispers. Stay with us. Stay. Stay. His hands trembled on the wheel. He screamed, pressing harder on the gas, until his headlights cut through the fog, and, suddenly, the bridge ended. He burst onto solid road, the night air clear again, the GPS calmly rerouting him back home. He slammed the brakes, gasping for breath. The bridge was behind him, shrouded in darkness. His radio was dead. His GPS worked fine. For a moment, everything seemed normal, until he looked at the time. The clock on his dashboard read 3:17 a.m. He'd left work at midnight. The drive should have taken 40 minutes. Yet 3 hours had vanished. The next morning, Daniel tried to find the bridge again. He drove down the same road, but this time, the barricades were back, massive and unmovable. A chain-link fence sealed the entrance. The bridge was impossible to cross. Locals told him he was lucky. Many who entered never came back. Others were found days later, wandering miles away, whispering the same words over and over. Stay with us. And Daniel never drove that way again. Story 2. The faceless worker before the bridge was officially sealed off to the public. There was a short period when the county tried to restore it. On paper, the project was simple. Reinforce the foundations, replace the corroded steel, and make Blackwood Bridge safe again. A crew of 6 men was hired, led by a foreman named Richard Cole. Richard was an old-school kind of man, someone who had worked construction for 30 years. He didn't believe in ghost stories or cursed places, but some of the younger workers whispered about the bridge even before the project began. They had heard the rumors about people disappearing, about strange voices in the fog. Richard dismissed it all as nonsense. The first week of repairs went smoothly enough. The crew cleared debris, set up scaffolding, and began inspecting the steel beams. Yet almost immediately, small things began to happen. Tools left in one spot would be found somewhere else, sometimes dangling precariously on the edge of the railings. Safety harnesses would tangle themselves overnight. One worker, Darren, swore he saw a shadow move across the beams when no one was there. By the third week, the atmosphere on the bridge grew heavier. The men started refusing night shifts. The fog was unpredictable, rolling in out of nowhere, swallowing the bridge in thick silence. Richard thought his team was just nervous. But then one morning, a worker didn't show up. His name was Elliot. He had been assigned to check the far side of the bridge the night before. His gear was gone, his truck still parked at the site. The only thing left behind was his hard hat, found in the middle of the span. They searched for days, even sent divers into the river. Nothing was ever found. After Elliot's disappearance, half the crew quit. Richard tried to hold the rest together, assuring them it was just a tragic accident. But deep down, he couldn't explain it either. A few nights later, Richard stayed behind to finish some paperwork in the site trailer. Around midnight, he heard the metallic clang of footsteps echoing on the steel beams outside. Heavy, deliberate, like boots on iron. Thinking one of the men had returned, Richard stepped out with his flashlight. The fog was thick, curling around the beams like smoke. He swept the light across the span and froze. There was a man walking across the upper scaffolding, high above the road. He wore a reflective vest, a hard hat, and steel-toed boots, standard gear. Richard shouted up at him, "Hey, get down from there. It's not safe." The figure stopped. Slowly, it turned toward him, and that was when Richard's blood ran cold. The man had no face and no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin where features should have been. The faceless worker stood motionless, head tilted slightly, as if studying Richard without eyes. Richard stumbled backward, his flashlight shaking in his hands. He shouted again, voice cracking, "Who's there? Answer me." The figure didn't move. Then, without warning, it stepped forward off the beam. Richard gasped, but instead of falling, the figure simply vanished into the fog. No sound of impact, no trace at all. Terrified, Richard ran back into the trailer and locked the door. All night, he sat with his flashlight on, listening to footsteps pacing back and forth outside. Sometimes they were above him on the beams, sometimes right outside the trailer door. But when dawn came, there was nothing, just silence. The next morning, Richard filed his resignation. He told the county he wouldn't set foot on that bridge again. Within days, the entire project was canceled. Officially, the reason was budgetary constraints. But among the workers, the truth spread quickly. They called him the Faceless Worker. Some believed it was Elliot, the missing man trapped between worlds. Others said it was something older, a presence tied to the bridge itself, wearing the shape of those who labored there. Richard never worked construction again. And whenever someone asked him about the bridge, he would only shake his head and say, "Don't go there. Once you see his face, or what's missing from it, you'll never sleep the same again." Story 3. The crowd in the fog years after the county gave up on restoring Blackwood Bridge. The structure became a local legend. Teenagers dared each other to sneak past the barricades. Urban explorers posted shaky videos online, and ghost hunters swore the place was charged with energy. Most of the footage showed nothing more than rust, graffiti, and endless fog. But one video stood out, and it was never officially released. The story came from a young woman named Ashley, who ran a small YouTube channel about abandoned places. She and two friends, Mark and Jenna, decided to film at Blackwood Bridge one summer night. It was supposed to be like every other exploration. Creepy atmosphere, some jokes, maybe a scare or two. But what happened that night broke Ashley's life in ways she never spoke about again. They arrived just before midnight. The barricades were easy to bypass, and soon their flashlights cut through the dense fog. The steel groaned under their steps, the river below invisible in the darkness. Ashley filmed everything, narrating into her camera about the history of the bridge, the missing workers, and the strange local rumors that at first it was just quiet. Too quiet. Even the sounds of insects and rushing water seemed muted, swallowed by the mist. Then Jenna said she heard something, a faint, rhythmic whisper, like chanting. Mark brushed it off as the wind. But the whisper grew louder the deeper they went. Ashley replayed the audio through her camera's mic, and all three froze. It wasn't wind. It was voices. Many voices, layered together, repeating something none of them could understand. Their flashlights flickered. The batteries had been fully charged, yet the beams sputtered like dying candles. And then Ashley noticed movement ahead, shapes in the fog. Dozens of them. At first she thought it was an illusion, shadows cast by their own lights. But as they drew closer, the truth became clear. Across the span of the bridge, a crowd of people stood shoulder to shoulder, perfectly still, perfectly silent. Ashley zoomed in with her camera. The figures were dressed in mismatched clothes, some modern hoodies, some suits from decades past, some outfits that looked centuries old. But it wasn't their clothes that made her blood run cold, that it was their faces, or rather, the lack of them. Smooth skin stretched where eyes should be. No mouths, no noses, only blank voids where human features belonged. Yet somehow, Ashley knew they were watching her. Jenna screamed. The sound echoed down the bridge, and in that moment, the faceless crowd moved. They didn't run. They didn't stagger. They simply began walking, in unison, toward the three explorers. Their steps were slow, deliberate, but the air grew colder with every movement. The whispers returned, louder now, almost intelligible. Ashley thought she could make out a word repeated over and over. Join. Mark panicked, yelling for everyone to run. The three of them turned and sprinted back toward the barricades, their flashlights swinging wildly. The camera jostled, capturing only fragments, pale shapes emerging from fog, the endless rhythm of footsteps behind them, Jenna crying out in terror. Halfway across, Mark dropped his bag. He turned to grab it, and Ashley saw his face go pale. The crowd was closer than it should have been, impossibly close, as though the fog itself carried them forward. Leave it, Ashley screamed, dragging him along. They didn't stop until the barricades loomed ahead. The moment they crossed back onto the road, the fog seemed to retreat, thinning like smoke blown away. The whispers ceased. The bridge was silent again. Shaking, gasping for breath, the three collapsed on the roadside. Mark swore he felt cold hands grab at his shoulders. Jenna refused to speak at all. Ashley clutched her camera like a lifeline. When they got home, Ashley reviewed the footage. The audio was distorted, filled with static, but the chanting was there, and so were the figures. Dozens of them, standing in the mist, faceless and motionless. Yet when the camera swung toward the escape, something else appeared. For a split second, the frame showed the three explorers themselves, running, terrified. But behind them, among the faceless crowd, was another Ashley, identical, staring blankly. Shaken, she never uploaded the video. Weeks later, police found her camera at the edge of the bridge, lying in the dirt. No trace of Jenna or Mark was ever discovered. Ashley herself was found months later, wandering on the outskirts of town. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, and she wouldn't stop whispering a single word to anyone who tried to speak with her. Join. Blackwood Bridge is more than just steel and concrete. It's a place where time, reality, and the line between the living and the dead blur. Some say it's haunted by the souls of those who vanished there. Others believe it's a doorway to something far older, far darker. After hearing these three stories, ask yourself, would you dare cross a bridge alone at night? Would you even drive past it if the fog rolled in thick and silent? And most importantly, what would you do if you saw a faceless figure waiting for you, or a crowd that wasn't human, standing silently in the mist? If these stories gave you chills, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There are countless more true tales of the unexplained waiting for you. Hit the like button if you survived this video with your nerves intact, and leave a comment telling us which story terrified you the most. Remember, Sometimes the scariest places aren't forests or abandoned houses. Sometimes they're the paths we cross every day, like a bridge that shouldn't exist, stretching forever into darkness. Asterisk.